Welcome to Breaking Bread, the Apostolic Christian Counseling and Family Services podcast. This is Matt Kaufmann, and today I've got Craig Stickling and Brian Sutter with me. Today we're going to talk about family worship, a critical topic, and I think we're all invested in. But before we do that, Brian, I'd like to turn to you and ask you to define a little bit about what we mean by worship.
Yeah, I guess what we're going to be thinking about is just simply put the opportunity of turning towards something, or in this case, someone where you are showing reverence, you are showing that something is higher and bigger than you, and that person here is God, Jesus Christ, and just turning our hearts and reverencing Him, acknowledging Him as being bigger and greater than we are.
So we're taking a very general view of worship here. In the discussion here, I'm sure there is a deep theological definition for worship that might include or not include certain things, but we're just talking about a general family worship where we're training everybody's hearts and minds towards Christ.
That's going to look maybe different in some homes, but there's going to be some general pieces. And just, Brian, as you mentioned that concept of bringing our hearts in alignment to God, and as we come together, that might look like just our time around the table. That might look at, Dad reading a Bible story, or as we think of even going to bed at night and having our nightly prayers, or in the car and we're driving and, hey, let's sing a song, and a song that all the kids love, and we're singing that song and leading that song and getting the kids ready for church as we go to church and having a talk about how excited we are to go to church. Those are all pieces that kind of flow out of worship.
But even saying that we're talking about family worship indicates to us that there are other avenues or places that we worship. So we have family worship. So to put family worship in context, what are some of those other worship places?
Yeah, I think three big categories that you could think of would be corporate worship, which would be worshiping as a church congregation or with a larger group, and then family worship is going to be within the context of the family, and then private worship. And I think those categories are helpful because you can see where they're distinct, but also it can kind of help you see that there is some crossover and some flow back and forth, and just being able to know which of those you're in and helping you understand that there's different values of each of those different ones.
And it requires that we take evaluation of ourselves as saying, how am I doing in those? Or have I let one fall at the expense of another?
And to be mindful that each one of them have a unique kind of connection with the next one. We're all part of a family. We might have a spouse and children, or we might not, but we still have parents or maybe siblings or relatives that we're connected to. And so we're woven into a family. We're also woven into a church family, and we're also individually responsible for our spiritual growth. And all of those fit together.
That's right, Craig. I think it's really important for us to be able to have an intimate, personal relationship with Jesus. That's, fundamental. But then also out of that to flow into worshiping with family, and out of that then to also worship with a congregation. And then even those they feed off of each other, they can help each other and grow.
Can we maybe even put our finger on, in our church worship service, where these three avenues of worship are utilized?
Well, I think corporate worship is a great place where you're going to be able to see all of those in some context. So, for example, you're going to be there with the congregation, so you're engaging in corporate worship. But there's also an aspect of being able to, if you're sitting in the pew with, let's say, your children, that there's an aspect of that you're also engaging in family worship, particularly with young kids. You may not be getting a lot of, like being fed personally if you're trying to manage your young kids. So it may not be as much private worship, but it could be family worship in the sense that you're doing it in the pew.
So sometimes when I feel frustrated because I'm not getting what I think I should be getting out of the service, I am thinking maybe more individualistic, which might be true in terms of the personal worship, but there's still merit and value in the family worship of being there in terms of just proximity with my family. Is that right?
Especially for that mom and dad to be reminded of that. Sometimes that Sunday afternoon, it's a little tiring, and the kids might be ready for their naps, but just to be able to think about that time that I have with them right there in God's house, them close to me, in the Word of God and in song. What a powerful message that is for our kids.
That breathes so much life into those at my age and stage of life. And I know sometimes I feel like it's a game going into afternoon church. How long can I remain? And will I be able to keep the youngster in tow through the first prayer, or maybe even the second reading? That would be great.
Yeah, or how many times am I going to have to leave and come back, and who gets the most, I made it back into the service for the day.
I'm sure there could be a rubric or a scoring method, and we could actually have a score on how that second service was done.
Yeah, and I think the thing with that is it can be so discouraging if you don't look at that through a lens of, why are we here? If your only goal to be there is to get something out of the sermon that's given, there's not a lot of reason to stick around. But if we can look at it through a larger context of, like you're talking about there, Craig, that there is meaning in being able to sit together as a family and show your kids that this is important, and see it as a way to engage in family worship, it helps bring some purpose to those Sunday afternoons. It feels like, what are we doing here, and why did we even stick around? Why not go home?
What might a youngster sit next to his dad, while he's singing there in church? What kind of connections might that youngster be making, or why might that be good specifically for him?
A couple of different things, Matt, come to mind. One is we model what's important to us. And when our children have a chance to see, there's a lot of places to go and to be, but when our children see us being in church, we are modeling to them that this time is God's time. This is important time. And so just that element of where we are at during a certain time frame is sending a message, and just that verse of, when we train up our children in the way that they should go. And so we're having a bigger picture of down the road that we want our children to desire to be in church on the Lord's day. And that's just that piece of them seeing where we are at can speak volumes even for our children.
I think that's interesting. You have a youngster who sees their father and knows that they're important, knows that they run a business, knows that they've got a lot of people at their beck and call throughout the week. And to see him or mom sit there with rapt attention, I think would be a powerful image.
Yes, it would. And even too, like, to hear a dad sing, throughout the week, not many kids are going to hear their fathers or their mothers singing, but to sit next to them and think, what is going on here? And why is Dad all of a sudden doing this strange thing?
And Dad's not a good singer.
Yes,
I mean, typically, you don't go fishing unless you're good at it, or you don't go, we do those things that we're good at. And so what does it mean that Dad or Mom are participating in terms of singing maybe, and they may not be a good singer? That's got to really resonate.
Especially when you see the fruit of that singing and the sense it's not necessarily, the Bible talks about being a joyful noise, but you look at the joy that comes in our hearts when we're singing, and to be able to notice that, wow, Dad's joyful here. What a great picture to be able for a kid to look up and to see that.
Yeah, I think it also can start to develop those fundamental understandings for kids where we don't just do what we're good at, or we don't just do what we like or what pleases us, but there's some things that are deeper and higher than that we engage because there is a God to be worshiped, and that we want to take that seriously, and we want to engage in that, whether or not we're good at it, whether or not it's convenient. We do it because of who God is, not because of what we want or what we get out of it.
That's it, guys. Next Sunday morning, we're Sunday afternoon, we're in church for the long haul.
Well, you might have to speak for yourself there, Matt. That sounds good right now, but we'll see when the second prayer is going on and if we can make it through or not.
Well, I know that we appreciate, and even from a minister lens as well, we appreciate the young families that are there. And you know what? A noisy kid is really a beautiful sound for a church to know that there's youth, there's kids, and just kind of that afternoon rumble sometimes of just kids in the pews is really a beautiful sound to have in a church. And we appreciate the efforts that mom and dads make with that.
I love that, Craig. I think there's something beautiful about a silent Wednesday night, a worship service, or a quiet Sunday morning. But Sunday afternoons can be quite a ruckus. And we're trying to keep our kids quiet, and it's refreshing to hear that, the sounds that they make, and knowing that the children are present is a very important part.
Yeah. And I think, too, it's a great reminder as we think about family worship within the context of corporate worship and just how those can flow together and build off of each other. And then as we go home, what does it look like to do family worship through the week? And what does it look like to make sure that we are engaging in private worship that then hopefully can flow into family worship and corporate worship?
I like how this has started out. So we started out with the first day of the week, right? And now I think in the next podcast, we're going to spend some time unpacking a little bit about what family worship looks like day in and day out, because it's not just on Sunday that we would do family worship, but we see the value of family worship on Sunday, and we're going to carry it through the week. Thanks, brothers, for being with me here today. Again, stay tuned. We'll talk a little bit more about the how-tos and what does family worship look like Monday through Saturday, so to speak. So thanks for being with me. If you've enjoyed what you've heard or want to hear and get more resources, always feel free to visit our website at accounseling.org.